Hello and welcome. And in this episode, we're talking about mindset. And there's so much out there about growth mindset, fixed mindset, and it's been put like one or the other. But the truth is, we're constantly on the whole continuum. We're like, we might have a fixed mindset in one area and a growth mindset in another. We don't have all one or the other. And I think that's been kind of misrepresented a little bit. And we're going to talk about this today because there's good and pros and cons for each one of them. It's good to have a growth mindset, but sometimes it's also good to have a fixed mindset just purely for survival. So we'll chat about that in this episode. And I'm Heike Fallon. I'm a personal high performance coach, and I help my clients live a healthy, sustainable lifestyle so they're mentally, physically strong, and they can just do whatever they love doing.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Shannon Passalacqua, and I am a coach as well, and I specialize in helping women heal after miscarriage.
Oh, well, so we need mindset. We need mindset. Let's start with that first, because I think we talk so much about growth mindset, fixed mindset. What is a mindset to begin with, right? And so I got that here written down because I don't want to mess that one up. So a mindset, and this is just one definition that might be slightly different depending on where you pull it up from. But a mindset is a set of beliefs, attitudes, and assumptions that shape how we think, feel, and behave in various situations. So what it really is, it's kind of like a mental framework through which we interpret the world, because we constantly have to make sense of the world. Our brain has to make sense of the world around us, and it needs somehow something to go by. Right? It can't be just open free flow. So we do need to have a certain mindset to make sense of the world and in order to make decisions and deal with challenges. So that's just generally what a mindset is.
I'm going to throw a question out there.
Sure.
I'm just going to throw a wrench into this conversation.
Yeah.
Do you think values are intertwined with mindset? Do you think they...
Oh, absolutely. Because I think a value is also a belief, right? I believe in, for example, integrity, or so I think values are thoughts and beliefs. And so absolutely, they fall into that 100%. So here's the thing.
Do you need to have your values straight? Do you need to understand your values in order to make progress on growth mindset?
I think it shapes your mindset. So it can be really helpful when you want to shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, which we'll talk about, the strategies. And I think reevaluating, or not reevaluating, but revisiting your values or knowing your values can be really helpful. It can be a great tool to do so. But before that, I want to, I love this little brain stuff.
I love it. I like the science behind it. I think
so here's the thing, because I think we forget a little bit, first of all, there's no single area in the brain where the mindset lives, right? There's the frontal cortex where our thinking more is and processing, but also the limbic system where emotions are. Like all of those, like in a mindset comes a lot together. It's not just a thought or a thinking without emotions. Emotions are always part of it as well. And so and habits play a role, and memory plays a role, because whatever happened to us in the past may have shaped how we think and how our mindset is formed. And so I think from that perspective, it's very important to understand that it's a very complex thing. And one other thing to always keep in mind, because if you have a fixed mindset, meaning you're really thinking that your skills and your ability can't change, your intellect can't change, you're where you're at and that's it, right? And a growth mindset is usually defined as believing that you have the ability to, learn new skills and learn different things, and you can manage challenges and setbacks and believe that you can overcome them. That doesn't mean they're going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, but you believe you can do it. Whereas with a fixed mindset, you might shut down and go like, I can't do this. And you just...
It's all or nothing.
It's all or nothing. And you just don't do that. So with that said, the brain has what's called does neuroplasticity, so it can change. It can change by forming new neural connections. And that means because thoughts and beliefs and all that are chemical and neural connections that are happening in the brain, that you can change. You can change actually how you think. So you can change from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, but you can also change from a growth mindset to a fixed mindset. Mm-hmm. It can go either way. So that I think is very important to understand that we're not born with it. We're not born with a fixed mindset or born with a growth mindset. It has developed and evolved over time.
Isn't it harder though with neuroplasticity to change those the older we get?
Well, no, yes and no. It depends on Okay, kids and young adults, the brain is still
developing.
It's a developing brain, so that it goes a little faster, the changes. But when we're talking about adults, you still can build them at any age. The speed, I don't know if there's actual statistics out, like, or research out how fast, but it's definitely slightly different when you're an adult compared to a child. But here's the thing, not because of the forming the neuroplasticity necessarily, because that can still form, but when it comes down to mindset, there's so many other things involved, because mindset is formed by also what we experience as a child or experience along the way. If there's traumatic events, like with a lot of your clients with miscarriages and having a traumatic event, or otherwise, setbacks or things that were dramatic. Let's say you lost your job, right? And you were in a high performing position. Those are memories, those are experiences, those are emotions that the brain will remember. And due to its putting all that into forming the mindset, that has a profound impact. So the older we are, the more experiences we went through, right? So it can be more challenging when we're older, just because of all the other circumstances, how a mindset is formed. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So totally. I mean, so it matters what experience we had. It matters what culture we're growing up with, what our environment is like, how school was for us, right? Like what generally what personal experiences we had. Because if we had a lot of great experiences too, where it was positive experience, that obviously helps, the same way as the more challenging experiences. And also, and we've talked about that before, how we talk to ourselves plays a big role. Like if we have a strong negative self-talk, that has a huge impact on our mindset as well. And into more a fixed mindset, right? It kind of comes together. And the more optimistic we talk to ourselves, the more it lines up with a growth mindset as well.
Right.
So we're not born with it. Number one, can we change it? 100%. We can absolutely change it. And yeah.
I've seen this in my own life. I mean, I was a very fixed mindset person. And in some ways, I mean, like, what we said, in some ways I still am. There are still, some things that I'm like, that's not going to change. But I was definitely a very fixed mindset person. It's just how I grew up. And as I grew up and as I aged and experienced the world and talked to more people and focused on growth, that changed. And I learned how to, I think, see a bigger picture. And so I think it's definitely possible to go from one to the other. And I could see like how you could slide back.
But you can also be at the same time have a growth mindset for one area in your life and a fixed one for something else, right? So because essentially a fixed mindset can help you really protect yourself and feel in control, right? Like if I go like, of something where I'm like, okay, I don't think I can do this today because I'm just too tired, and I'm not going to do this because I feel like I can't do this. it's also protecting me in a way, because maybe I really shouldn't do this today because I'm too tired, right? Because running a marathon when I'm too tired might not be a smart thing to do.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Which comes down to, checking in. So it's a fine line. Is that fixed mindset a good saving me kind of mindset, or is it one that I'm avoiding a challenge because I'm having the fear of doing something, right? But so at the same time, I could be the same day talking about, going on a call like today. I wasn't planning on running a marathon today anyways, but but coming onto a call and saying like, hey, we're having a great conversation, and I know this, conversation will impact people's life, and I'm excited to do this, and I can absolutely do this, even though I may have not figured this all out yet, but I know this is great value for people, so I can go in with a growth mindset in other areas at the same time. So we're not necessarily one or the other. It's more about really figuring out, when is a growth mindset actually a good and appropriate to have? Because we also don't want to just jump off cliffs, thinking.
Well, and I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and it was more about grief, and but it goes, I think, hand in hand with this, because we were saying like, feel your feelings, and this is what, I talk to my clients a lot about, is like, don't rush through your feelings.
Yeah.
Don't rush through it. Like, you really need to work through all that. And you need to be able to get out of it. And when is it, I'm too deep into it and I need to, like, okay, I felt my feelings, now it's time to figure out how to
change there,
move on and change. So I think it's very similar. Like, okay, when is it safe to have a growth mindset? When is it safe to know, hey, I've felt my feelings and now it's time to work on healing?
Yeah. And that's exactly like the fixed mindset, when you stay just checking in with your feelings, all that, but then you go like, I don't want the challenge of going out there and moving on because it feels uncomfortable. Then that is, of course, the downside of a fixed mindset, and you won't do it.
Right.
And a growth mindset. So
there's like this happy medium.
Yes. And the growth mindset, though, if you shift to that, helps you to actually get out of that and move on, right? You do need a growth mindset to move on and to, change and recover from situation. That's why it's really helpful for general resilience, right? And to be able to handle challenges and cope with challenges instead of just pulling the blanket over your head. But the downside of a growth mindset can also be is that we think we can do too much and we burn out.
Yeah.
The growth mindset can also, we can overexert ourselves because we think we can just do it all. And before we know it.
Is that because we're ignoring our feelings? Is that because we're ignoring our body and our emotions?
I'm pretty sure it's multiple components, but I think big part is not checking in with ourselves, having the self-awareness to know where we at. Do we need rest? Do we need a break? And, or, we have the goal in mind and just want to keep going because we know we can, but we're not checking in along the way. And it's, again, a fine line to figure that out. The other thing is when we have a growth mindset, sometimes, not all, but sometimes, including me, tend to set very high goals, and they might not be fully realistic. And you can get kind of out of hand there with that by setting unrealistic goals. And then the growth mindset might not be the best thing at that moment. So you might have to rein it in. So I think at the end of the day, it really, really comes down to self-awareness, learning to check in and.
Yeah, because it's going to be different for everyone, right? Like,
correct.
And bringing it back to healing after a miscarriage or grief, there are some people who, I have a really good friend, and I think I've mentioned this before, who she had her miscarriage, and she was very able to move on faster than I was. And there was no judgment on either or our parts, but she was able to accept it faster. She was able to move through her grief faster. And I am someone who feels something, I feel things very deeply. So I think there is also a component of what's your personality type. Like I feel things deep. And I have learned this, and it doesn't mean I'm too emotional, and it doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. It's just I know that when I feel something, it's going to take me longer to process those emotions and be able to move on. And I don't even want to say move on, because I don't think you ever just move on, but to work through it and get out of bed. And like you do it easier than I do. I think you work through things faster, and you're able to, am I wrong with that? You look like,
well, I don't know if it's easier. I think it comes
you do it in a different way.
it comes down to, yeah, I think it comes down to awareness, 100% self-awareness, checking in with the emotions. I think maybe, I don't know, some things I may handle not as emotional because I've practiced the skill of disconnecting the emotions with outcomes. And I've worked hard on that, to not let emotions be, I mean, they are mingled with everything, right? We have emotions, all that. But I think often I'm very logical and structured, and that helps me to sometimes disconnect my emotions from the external, like to separate internal and external more clearly. I wouldn't say it's easy. I would just say that's a skill that I've practiced over the years, and it's that helps me now to get over faster, and that's one strategy for keeping a growth mindset for me, to know that what I'm feeling, to analyze my feelings, but then also go, okay, what I'm feeling right now is this in this way connected, but doesn't need to stay like this, because it will change. And so it's part of a growth mindset, but it also, and now I grew up, I think, in a very growth minded environment. So I think that really shaped me. So my upbringing was definitely more with you can do anything, you just do it.
Yeah, no, and I grew up with a very traditional.
So I probably have long years of practice.
Yeah, and it's new to me, and I don't know if I want to separate my emotions from my mindset. Does that make sense?
It's not separating, it's just taking a step back and looking at it. Are my emotions serving me right now to what's going on, or is it not serving to go that route? It still bothers me. And I can get anybody that knows me knows I can get really
emotional.
My emotions can really come out. I will voice how I feel.
Good. That's good.
So emotional.
I think I take that as a time to learn.
Yes.
And that might be my maybe that's my form of growth mindset, my ADHD, but it's definitely like when I am feeling something emotionally, I learn about it. And I will take a long time, and it looks like I'm hiding, but I'm actually learning.
Yeah. The key is not to ignore it, right?
Yeah. And so it goes back to what you were saying, self-awareness.
And at the end of the day too, we are unique. We're all different, and we process differently, different things.
Thank God we are all different.
But also because, again, like I said in the beginning, we all grew up in different environments. We had different experiences. We have definitely, have memories saved differently. For me, definitely due to my health setbacks I had, I definitely have to remind myself not to fall into a fixed mindset when it comes to my physical strengths. And I tend to go that route, and I have to really kind of check in there and do different things. So here's a couple of things you can do to shift from a more fixed mindset to a more growth mindset, if that is appropriate and needed.
If you're in a safe environment to be able to do that.
If you're standing at a cliff, you don't just jump down because you think, let's see if we can do a jump and we'll learn from it. That's not what we're doing. You want to, so one big thing is, I think, acknowledging or checking in and being aware of how we're talking in the moment, and that, how is our self-talk in the moment, and reframing
very
that.
difficult for people, because I think I hate to throw those words around but I do think a lot of people go through life just on cruise control or just kind of going. And I don't think we all stop and think about our thoughts and how we're talking to ourselves. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. So reframing your self-talk, that means if I can, it sometimes if like, hey, I can't do this workout. That's too hard for me to say, like, because that's really fixed mindset, right? But saying like, hey, I can't do this workout maybe today yet, but if I start working on that, I will be able to do this kind of workout in 3 months after training. Or, hey, I'm going to start where I'm at right now, so I will do whatever I can from this workout, even if I'm not doing the whole thing. Right. That would be more a reframed self-talk, which leads more into a growth mindset.
Well, and I think a good question to ask ourselves that is, what's the next best step? When we're feeling stuck and we're feeling, okay, I can't do that, or do that. Well, what's one small step I can take that will get me towards that towards that goal? It doesn't have to be a huge step. What's the next best step?
Yeah. And another good strategy, and you kind of already said it along the way here, but generally shifting to how we look at failures or things that didn't work out how we intended or wanted to, to look at not as a failure, not as a, punishment or whatever, but actually looking at things that didn't go well, to go like, okay, there's whatever it is, what can I learn from that?
Yeah.
And just shift. And that's hard sometimes, but there's always something that can be pulled out. And sometimes it's something very little that you go like, okay, this didn't work out the way I wanted, but either
that doesn't mean ignoring.
Either I learned something about myself in the situation and let it be, I was upset about something and learned like, oh, that really got me bent out of shape, and I learned that's not how I want to react to it again. Or it can be, what, maybe in the long run, whatever happened might be good. There's always something that we learn from it.
Yeah. And I'm going to say, and I think it can be very hard in certain times of our lives. But it is something I keep coming back to, whether we journal about it, whether we write it down, or whatever. And it really does seem like such ridiculous advice when you're in the middle of grief or despair, finding something to be grateful for. And honestly, like yesterday, I went on a walk and I was just grateful for the changing leaves. Like that was what I could find, is I was grateful for the leaves on the tree.
Yeah.
And that was what I could find. And then I ran into a friend and we, on my walk, and we started talking. And I was grateful that we had a good conversation. So it is just finding gratitude is going to help with our mindset.
Yeah, 100%. Gratitude practice.
And I know we say it all the time and it sounds so flippant. It really does. In hard times, it sounds so dumb, but it really is, I think, where we can start.
Yeah. One other thing that I really think utilizes, again, a more brain function aspect is taking on little challenges. So when you start doing small challenge, pick not the big challenge, because that can be overwhelming, but choosing something that might be a little bit of challenging.
That you can be successful at.
That you end up being successful, because then also you get a little bit of chemical release in the brain for, I did it, I could do it, right? And that helps.
Can I tell a story about that really quick? Sorry. My stepdaughter was in therapy, and her therapist, sorry, I won't go into it, but she advised her to try just baking something, which I thought was really interesting, because when you're baking something or you I don't know, garden or whatever, you see the result. And like when you're baking, you see the result quickly, and that is a success. And so I think that's what you're saying, is take on a small task and be successful at it.
Yeah. And let's say somebody says, I can't bake, right? Well, then start with the even though they're not necessarily healthy, start with the pre-made cookie.
Right.
Well, you
Don't
only
start with the hardest thing.
you only slap it on the cooking sheet and stick it in the oven. Nothing big. Like, don't start with the fancy double layered cookies with whatever decoration on it, yada yada yada, right? Pick a simple, more simple, easier challenge to get started, and then you build it up, right? So you start, and cooking is a great example. You start with a simple recipe, not the most complicated one.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? If the cookie comes out and it's not perfect, it's okay, because you did it and it's a cookie.
Yeah.
Is it going to be?
We'll learn from it.
And then you redo it, and you can actually fine tuning as you go. And that's how you start building a more growth mindset, by accomplishing these smaller challenges. And ideally, if you have some big challenge that you would like to do, starting with one that kind of correlates to that, you can actually build it up in that direction. So and I do want to throw one more in, and that just in general, being more mindful and present in the moment really helps as well. Again, for practicing the self-awareness of how we feel, how our emotions are, what we're thinking, how we're behaving, right? Because our behaviors are reflecting our mindset too. We might be thinking with a growth mindset, but our behaviors are more like a fixed mindset kind of behavior. So really taking more data in about yourself, of how you feel, how you think, how you speak, how you behave, and really tweaking whatever needs to tweak in that sense. So yeah, so there's a lot to mindsets.
Yeah, and it is. I like it. It is a continuum.
Yeah, it's a continuum,
and it isn't always good. So just make sure, like you said, do it in the safe times.
Fantastic. Well, good conversation about mindsets, growth and fixed mindset. Go out, pay attention to how you think, how you feel, how you behave, and what shifts and changes you might need to do, want to do, can do at this moment, and build it from there.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.